Hello, everyone. This is Jeremy Warner with ETHOSystems of Arizona, teaching the training session 1 for the year-end class. There is going to be another year-end training session, but it'll be covering the same thing. So if you signed up for this class and unable to make it, 2 ways you can, watch this. Number one, Jen and Kirsten from our office will be sending this recording, as well as if you were missing this one, you can sign up for the other one, but everyone listening now is on here. So we'll get started. You can hear me. If you can't, please let me know in chat, but I'll assume if I don't see anything in there, everyone can hear me. You should be able to. As we go along, all of your audio is muted. It's not my decision. It's how GoToWebinar works. So as we go along, certainly pop into the questions or the chat. I'm going to jump over to our demo server where I'll be running this class, but if any questions come up, I'll periodically revert back to the questions as we go along. So I'll try to keep up with them. You don't have to wait till the end to ask those questions, but like I said, I'll try to get back to your questions and peek back at any given time, whether you do it in the questions or the chat. I'll look both places. Here's our class agenda. When I say class agenda here, we'll be talking about 24.3 release notes. The 24.3 is the version of Sage 300 for year end, unless they unexpectedly come back with a change last minute here. When I say last minute, within a couple of weeks, but nothing is planned or aware of anything that should be released after this 24.3 on our Sage desktop. As you can see here, we're on the 24.3. You can always find your version of Sage by going into Sage Desktop, Help, About Desktop to look at this version. With the recording that Jen and Kirsten will send out, I'll also have her send the respective documents that I put together for this. One of them being, as you can see here in the folders, the 24 release notes. I'm going to point out a couple things, some highlights on the AP side. There are some things on the payroll side as well. We want to make sure, getting on 24.3, so we'll be compatible with the Atrix side of things. With that being said, I'm going to jump right into just pointing out I'm not going to go through the entire release notes, but as you see here, I screenshot a couple notes. Now, this 24.2, this release notes that I'll be sending you for 24 include enhancements in 24.3, 24.2, 24.1, but two of them in particular I wanted to point out that wasn't, one's more of a fix and one's more of an enhancement. But as you see here in 24.2, as far as trying to pull in the respective, if the recipient's first and last name, the first and last name now display properly. I remember in years past when you try to bring in the first and last name, it wasn't bringing it in properly within Atrix, so you would literally have to, if you didn't, you'd have to manually type in the last and first name if it wasn't in the exact syntax that you need. So this has been fixed if you've experienced that in the past. As we go along, kind of jump around and make some recommendations. Via Atrix, you have a test run, right? So even when I say today, tomorrow, when you can find time, even leading up before your scheduled 1099 and W-2s, I always highly recommend at least running through the test run of Atrix. One thing I'll be pointing out is an error that I've seen when you download 24.3 of Sage. It wasn't presented itself in 24.2. So in my documentation and as we go through class, I'll point out the quick and easy fix. But rather than be stressed with an error when you're ready to do 1099s and W-2s, I'll give you the heads up and the easy fix there. You can always reach out to myself or another consultant to help. But I'll point that out here shortly. But as far as the fix in 24.2, not having to do with errors, but just more of how the data is brought from accounts payable to into Atrix. As far as the class, I will go down here to this next one. But as far as the agenda, the first thing, even though I jumped right into AP, we're going to be focusing on the ATRIX side of things, and then as well as the release notes. Then we'll start getting into processing 1099s, and the last, we'll say 45 minutes to an hour will be the W-2 side of things. So I always like to start off with the AP side of things first, since everyone does have, AP that I know of on their system, but you may outsource payroll. So that's why I put payroll W-2s at the latter half of this meeting. With that being said, let me go back to this second big enhancement that I saw. This is actually in 24.1, so not even the latest release of 24.3, but if you're on 23.2, I know our demo server was on 23.2 up until I upgraded it to 24.3. With that being said, this 24.1 obviously came after the 23.2. But now, as you can see here, I didn't put this screenshot together. I'd like to take credit for it, but I'm not gonna. This is literally in the release notes PDF that I snipped out of there. But as you can see here on the setup of the vendor, there's an alternate 1099 address. If that benefits you, I know clients have asked in the past, but that wasn't available through Sage. But now they have rather than use the general address, you can check this alternate address to 1099, come down here. I don't have the second screenshot, but it's literally an address screen, and we can actually pull that up within Sage 300 here. But it's the button down here that wasn't available before 24.1. And this alternate address, if you have this box checked and populate it, ATRIX will pull that data in. Close out of this guy here. Go back to the agenda here. So, like I said, I'll send over the PDF. You can download it off the portal, but I already downloaded it and have that. We'll push that out to you. And there's definitely more enhancements in version 24 than just those two. But I picked on those two to point out, since we're doing the year-end talking 1099s here. So taking maybe a step back, even though this is step 2, if you're first time working with the company. When I say first time working with the company, maybe you started in 2024. And my point is, the prior person would have had a ATRIX login if they were using ATRIX. So I would recommend, if you haven't enrolled, come out here to this efile.atrix.com. Let's see if my link works here. There it is. And there's a enroll button here. Chances are someone at your office, either prior to you or yours, you can come up. But if not, and you're a new company and you started, Sage at the start of 2024, and this is the first time doing it, and you haven't been doing 941s in here, as you can see, I won't start enrolling. But as you can see here, you can put in set your username and password, contact information. You'll have to put your EIN number in there. You would have to do this for each respective company EIN, so you can process the 1099s or payroll if you have separate companies for that. Where this is going to come into play is once we go through the ATRIX 1099s and W-2s at the tail end, it's going to prompt you for a login, and this will be the login that you would use to file your state, federal, and if you have ATRIX, if you use the complete package, they'll send out the W-2s and 1099s for you as well, a physical copy. Also on this agenda here, talking about EW-2s, I had a call from a client, not sure if she's on this call today, but she's been using ATRIX for the past number of years, never named client names, but past number of years, sending out the W-2s, the hard copy. I'll explain here, even on this meeting, on the vendor side of things and AP side of things, how you have the option to do one or only the EW-2. EW-2 meaning Atrix would send, well, when I say Atrix would send, you would have to put your email configuration settings in there. And this is an optional step. This is not required. You could certainly have Atrix, send the hard copies to everyone. But like I said, this client this year wanted to go down this route. And what Atrix does is it builds the email with a unique password for that respective employee. So they get the email, they don't have a PDF attached. They click on a link, brings them to the Atrix website where they store the W-2 secured website where they store the W-2s and 1099s, and they access it from that unique username and password specific to that employee. So it's an automated generated email for that. I'll jump back and look at questions here shortly after I kind of go over these main topics here. So again, this Word document will come over if you want to jot that down, certainly. Otherwise, it'll come through from Jen or Kirsten. I did also find this year-end deadlines link. I mean, this is, you could always go out to the Atrix website and browse yourself and look to see what else would be beneficial. But like I said, I'm just kind of grabbing some highlight things that I would believe would spark your interest, right? So if you don't know already, right, Atrix put out the 2024 year-end e-file deadlines, so it's a good handy help topic, by state, as we see down here below. I know on this call, I recognize a few names that I saw pop up, definitely are in different states. So this is a full picture of all the states and your federal guidelines. Close all tabs. Even though I said we're going to get into EP, I do want to just knock out this here real quick just to kind of make this point. As far as EW2, again, I found this link. I actually talked to Atrix support. When I say actually, I mean, I feel like I've called Atrix support at least once or twice, every year since I've been doing this, since 05 going on 19 years. I will say Atrix support is very, very knowledgeable, helpful. I've always had good experience, maybe early on, possibly not, maybe a call or two that I wish I would have got to someone else, but literally the number of times I've called recently, they've been amazing. But with that being said, the Atrix gal that I talked with earlier this week, not even for this, but I decided to put this into our year end. She showed me this link, right? And it literally walks you through the screenshots for how to set up. And again, us consultants, myself, any other ETHOSystems consultant can definitely get on a meeting with you to help you out with any questions you have in here. But again, they put nice screenshots. This is that, the generated password, right? That Atrix, whatever program they use to automate the unique password. It'll list out the respective emails, right? Email addresses for the employees and the password. And so it gives you a before look before you just start blindly, sending W-2s and 1099s to employees and vendors. Contact email address, that would be your payroll person or whomever's, responsible for, or AP gal or guy. But as you see here, this starts again, the technical side. We're not going to, on this call, start setting up one, but again, giving you a very, very nice tool, right? Screenshot tool, help topic, that information is out there. If, again, you decide you want to email W-2s or 1099s. I'm going to jump over here to, I'll show you why I have that paid invoice register up. See here. Yeah, here it is right here, the electronic 1099, right, for your email address. This is what Sage would use, Atrix would use to retrieve the respective 1099 email if you so choose to email it out. Even though I said I'm going to start with AP first, I'm going to jump around here and jump over to employee, set up employees. This is sample data, Timberline construction sample data. Let's see here, where's this guy next? This electronic W-2 only. This is, I talked with the Atrix gal, and she said, if you check this box, as it says, only, they will literally, and you do the complete package for Atrix, it would literally only send that email for the W-2 access. If you don't have it checked, you can still send the email based on the window in Atrix. You can still send the email, but Atrix would also send a hard copy. Just off the kind of hip, and I thought about this a little bit before, if this is the first time you're doing EW2s or 1099s, it may be beneficial to send them an email as well as the hard copy. Someone may say, well, why would I want to do both? Well, I'm going to say these days, and I've seen it, whether it's my assistant, and it's not my assistant's fault, it's the recipient. Are they things going to junk mail? Are they not looking for it in clutter or junk? Or if they're going to a big contractor for 1099, hey, does their IT have a very aggressive email filtering system, right? And they're blocking it. It's not showing up in their inbox. So as far as a first run, if you haven't sent EW2s through Atrix, EW2s or 1099s, like I said, it may be beneficial to send both, right? Just to ensure that, hey, makes you feel better that you know that they at least got the hard copy. Let me jump back over here. This is our demo server. I'm gonna see here if there's any questions to this point. I see something in there. Bear with me. I just need to make this question screen bigger here. My version is 20.41. Do I need to upgrade to current version? And how do I do that? As far as the 24.3 is the year end supported by Sage. So yes, I would highly recommend the 24.3. I won't say it necessarily stops you in your tracks, but when you start going back to 20.4, there is a version 22, like I mentioned. There's a version 23. So those are year end for those respective years. So the last thing I want to say, oh, give it a shot, right? You may be good because whether tax tables don't update properly, there's been plenty of enhancements up to the 24.3 to comply with year end, W-2s or 1099s, what have you. As far as how to do that, you can reach out to your consultant. If you don't have one, you can certainly email myself. I'll put my contact information and we can pass it along to see who would be up in line, if you will, to help you get that upgrade going. Hopefully that answers your question there. I apologize, I don't see the train, right? See that. And then, yeah, so let me jump back over here. I'll peek back. Hopefully that answered it. If it didn't, you can certainly send another question. And like I said, I'll put my contact information here. I know it's on the, I'm just going to put should have had my email up here, but that'll come along in the agenda. I'll send this agenda out as well. As far as 1099s, downloading and updating Atrix forms, I have seen literally from 23.2 to 24.3, I've gotten calls from a few clients now, and I experienced it on our demo server when we upgraded it. When I say we, I upgraded us from 23.2 to 24.3. Right here, again, this will come through. I did snip these. Like I said, 2 or 3 clients have gotten this. We got it on our demo server. But you get this Go Atrix. So there's some kind of disconnect between Sage's recent download, the 24.3, and how it's trying to find the Atrix update servers. So I'm not bringing this up to worry you. I'm giving you this as a heads up. So again, the way you can find out if you get this error or have this error, because it's not for everyone, I don't know what is breaking it. when I say that, it's happened to a few people now. Literally the person on Atrix call told me about this error report. I told her, I've always seen that there. I just never ran it because to me, it looked like a report. Well, it's actually a tool that you can run on that given workstation, because Atrix is workstation specific. So again, this path will be here, the C program 86. You can read it there, right? I ran that and literally clicked fix update, and it knew where to go out to find the latest update. It ran through the update. I jumped back over to AP, ran federal 1099s, no more error. So again, I learned about this error report this year. In the past, there was other ways around it, and then even here, you can actually go out to their website, which is actually this link up here. And if you click updates, this button here, it brings product updates, Sage 300. So again, I had this link readily available to you. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, you click run and it runs the update. A guy from Atrix told me about this. And then earlier this week, I called because I couldn't recall where this path was. And she's the one that told me about this error report. So again, I did this on the demo server and it worked. So you don't have to do both. I just wanted to put both out there just to let you know kind of the things that as a consultant I went through to help the clients out. And the reason why I didn't click run because it's already working, but I put the screenshots. It's literally a quick click run through here. And again, that wasn't meant to scare anyone. That was just meant to, hey, if you see that message, don't think you're the only one. We have a easy fix for that. All right, so let's get into the 1099 prep and doing 1099s vendor or fiscal entity if you have prefixes set up in Sage. Before I do, let me just go peek back at if there's any questions to this point. I don't think so. Let me expand this out here. That's what I need to do. Oops. Now I see. I think everyone should be able to see this. There was one more kind of the same idea. To answer both, I only saw this one here before. I would say when I say I would say, Sage says, hey, for supported year end 24.3 for 2024 is the way to go. Because if anything does come up or anything doesn't comply or doesn't pull in, then Sage at that time will say, hey, you have to get to 24.3. So let's go here. Before the preparation report, I'm going to show you why I had that report up here right when we got on the meeting. I've said this story again. I don't name client names, but it's happened more than one. And when I say more than one, there's clients that I've worked with quite a bit, and then come to find out their 1099 year is further back. Oops, I check this. Once I check that box, it's saying, hey, you check that box, you must enter a valid email. So I'm just going to deselect that, save, and close. Before 1099 preparing, the first thing I would do is go into File, Company Settings, AP Settings. Even before running 1099 preparation reports, before check their FEIN numbers, anything like that, the first thing I would do is go into AP Settings and look at your years. Now, this is the exception to the rule because this is sample data, and there's truly sample data in 22. But in your world, if you saw 22, we need to get that fixed, right away. And when I say fixed, meaning let's close the years and get current, because I've seen where the year ending date is 2024 or the current year, but the year ending date is back in 22, 21, 20, what have you. So you may say, well, how do I do that? I've talked with clients and they're like, oh, I didn't even realize there was a closed 1099 here. Now, whether that was the end user not having security access to either of these, or maybe just having a closed year, but not having the 1099 year for whether it was an overlook or a mistake on the security setup. Point is, there's two respective years, and for 1099s, this is the one we want to make sure, you know, it is current. And what I did right before this class, I've always talked about this point. I've never shown it until this year. I decided, hey, why not show it rather than just talk about it? So my point here is I set up a vendor, just pick 99 because the first vendor in the sample data is 100. So pick Joe Schmo. That used to be a show back in the reality show. So Joe Schmo here. But notice here the 1099 settings. So this year, plenty of clients look at this year and immediately think 2024. Why wouldn't you, right? Well, this year is what Sage knows as this year. So I know it sounds like a simple point, but I've mentioned that to plenty of clients who are like, oh, shoot, I didn't realize that. So don't get fooled by this year thinking it's 2024. That's not the system date, real world date. That's what Sage knows as being the 1099 current year. So this year is 2022. Last year, as you already know the answer, 2021, and next year is 2023. Now, if I go over here to reports, standard report, paid invoice register, which I'm sure if you haven't ran this, I'm sure you ran something similar. Before this meeting, before this meeting last night, I entered 2 manual checks to Joe Schmo, 24. So as you'll see, I did the payment, not that you would necessarily want to cross over years, but I just wanted to show you that I did enter 2 checks, one with the 23 date and one with the 24 date, as you can see here. The amount paid, I just put the dollar amount as the year, right? Could have picked any number, but just the amount paid 2023. And then for the year 2024, 2024. As you can see, crossing years totaling 4,047. So the reason why I wanted to point that out is I saved a snippet. So when I went to go put the 2024 date in there with the check number 2024, the amount 24, Sage does give you a heads up saying, hey, the payment date entered is more than 1 year in the future of the 1099 year, right? It says we recommend that you click cancel and either close the 1099 year, right, to get them current. Because what ultimately happened is, I wanted to write this scenario because I've seen, when I say seen clients do this, I haven't been sitting there at their desk watching them, but I know one in particular, 10 years ago, a guy said, I said, do you run 1099s out of Atrix? And he said, no, because I don't trust the numbers. I said, what do you mean you don't, had a friendly conversation with him, right? What do you mean you don't trust the numbers? He's like, they've never been right. They're always off. They're not what when I run other reports out of Sage, they're right, but the 1099s are not. Sure enough, we went over AP settings, and I forget his actual year, but it was a few years back, or a couple of years back, so it wasn't current. So he kept trying, catching his tail, if you will, and it wasn't updating the proper this year, last year, next year. And it could have been a scenario just like this, because there is no 2 years from now. There's a next year, and as you see here, even though next year we said 2023, this message in Sage says, I'm going to put both of those together, right, into the next year. So point is, if someone did something like this, they could have saw this message and be like, let me click OK, I need to get this check out, right? Or they didn't go through manual check, they went through print checks, and whether this message came up or not, I'm not sure, but it would have done the same. same thing. So again, or I should say again, but watch this. So you may say, well, how do I fix this? Well, and you may have been thinking that the whole time I was kind of giving the lead up. Number one, right? Check your years, see where they're at. Then close the respective 1099 year, and you'd want the main year updated as well. But close the 1099 year. In this case, I'm going to actually close 22 and get to 23, right? I'm not going to go to 24 because I do want to go through the 1099 and there is no data in 24 in the sample data. So I just close the year, as you can see here. AP settings, there's 2023. And now watch this. If I go over here to 99, you may say, well, Jeremy, that didn't fix it because this year is 2023, right? Because we just got into 2023. Why didn't it split out? Well, that would be a question for Sage, and I'm sure they would just, you know, not to speak for them, but hey, it's written in the program this way, right? That they're not going to say it is what it is, but I'm just telling you that's announcing this scenario. So again, you say, well, how do I fix this? Close the year, get current. You see, it didn't split it out like you would want it to, right? It bundled it up already back into this year after it was next year before. This is the tool that not all clients know about, not because we hide it from you, but for year-end classes, I always like to point this out. Recalculate 1099 totals, and you want to recalculate 1099 totals when everyone's out of AP. They don't have to get out of general ledger, they don't have to get out of job costs, but you do want, you know, everyone out of AP, so we're not processing AP at this time. So once we get the year current, we recalculate 1099 totals, and I'm going to click start for all vendors. And recalc totals. And then what this is saying, hey, it's going to zero out balances, right? And then it's going to repopulate, in so many words, repopulate those buckets or those totals. And what this is doing is it's going out and looking at all the respective transactions for this year, last year, and next year. So now if I go into setup vendors here, that recalculate just split this out. And this is sample data that, I mean, ran really, really quick. So I'm sure on your system, or, you know, it'll take more time to recalculate it. So don't expect a snap of the finger like you just saw, but I would guesstimate 5 or 10 minutes at most, and then it does its trick. But again, you'd want to make sure you get the year current and recalculate. I know I harped on that, but I have more and more clients, and it's not just a couple that have either said what that guy said, hey, don't trust the numbers, or hey, if a new CFO or new controller, new accounting manager comes on board, they may start second guessing, hey, were the years current at the time of the year cutover within the past year? So hopefully that was beneficial. I know it absolutely can. Let me go back to questions here. All right, perfect. Let me come back here. All right, so now we have that, right? And even if you're somewhat confident that you're good on the current years and you've been there, I mean, it doesn't hurt to at least just to run that recalculate, you know, to ensure there is no second guessing. Once you have that set, then that's when we start, excuse me, start coming over here to, this is a standard reports miscellaneous 1099 preparation. So reports miscellaneous 1099 prep. This is if you have, sometimes I'll bring up the term prefixes to clients and they're like, what are prefixes? Well, some may say, yeah, I know what prefixes are, but prefixes are, if they're set up in your environment, if you go to general ledger and go to set up prefix base, Sage allows for prefix A, prefix B, and prefix C. Sample data just utilizes prefix A, and it was renamed to company. So if you go to general ledger, not that you have to go to now, but if you feel like it, have at it. This is what is referred to as prefixes, your numerous companies within a given data folder company. If you don't have prefixes here, right, and just have accounts, that means you don't utilize prefixes, and there you can simply just run to vendor because you have one vendor for the entire data folder company. But as it says, it doesn't say by prefix, but by fiscal entity. This report, they decided to use the term fiscal entity because typically your prefix A is your company or entity. And I know in sample data, as we saw, we have, I'm going to jump back over here to GL under setup prefix base companies. If I click list, they have companies 10, 21, 22, and 50, right? So they have 4 companies in here numbered 10, 21, 22, and 50. If I come back over here to AP, if I do by fiscal entity, here's our prompt, right? As we were talking about the year. So now you can look at current year. We know we just closed 22 and got in 23. So we know current year is 2023 for this sample data. Current year, the minimum reporting amount is 600 as it was last year. I have that in a note, just a snippet, but right, 600 or more. If I come back over here to AP, you can find that on the IRS.gov website. We're not, tax consultants, we're not accountants, even though we have much knowledge there, right? So you can refer to your, tax accountant or accountant on that. So you would think, hey, when I run this 1099 prep, yeah, let's look at the one that received 1099 because this right here, this is what Atrix is going to pull in if I left it like this. Now, current year, we go to last year. Yeah, so now I went into 2023. Notice this here. So let me go back to current year, right? Print preview. Now, you may say, well, Jeremy, you just told me you cut a check for 2023, right? So what I always recommend is for this 1099 prep is to click all, right? And the reason for that is because I'm going to point out my intended mistake here. So notice now, here's that Joe Schmo for 2023. And then the last page is the report total. So if I went in the mindset of, hey, 600 current year, which yours would be 2024, right? But sample data is 2023. Print preview. Oh, we have no 1099s this year. Well, when I set up that vendor very quickly, right, 99, I entered a check. We got 1099 totals over the $600 amount. But as you can see, I never put in a tax ID number, tax name, but more importantly, I didn't click this box. Vendor receives a Form 1099. So I use that example to point out, hey, if in a given year or that year that you're working on, if the AP clerk is, oh, we got a new vendor, oh, let me set that vendor up. Let me put their address information. Let me cut the check. They're standing at the door, or the PM said, hey, I need a check for this guy, or subcontractor. They could be quickly setting up that vendor to get that check to appease the PM and the project, right, to keep that going and make the subcontractor happy. Well, it doesn't, just because we have a 1099 total here, doesn't automatically select that box, because I think everyone on this call would know, right, there's certain vendors, types of vendors, right, that you don't need to provide a 1099 for. So it's up to you to run a 1099 prep report. Oops, let me click. I do want to save that. To check that box, put the tax ID number in here. I'm going to make one up here. Put the right number. Characters, save and close. And now when I come back to this 1099 prep report, print preview, and there I am, even when I have the, receives 1099. But again, point out when you first run this report, I would recommend run it for the respective year, put in 600, and then leave it as all, simply for you to scroll all the way through and be like, hey, why doesn't Joe Schmo have a, receive a 1099? Why does it say no? He should be yes, right? Boom, let's go set up, check that box. Someone forgot to do it. In this case, it was me, right? Or someone that was trying to hurry a check out the door. And then once you get your check marks checked, or you may find that you want to deselect someone, they shouldn't have been checked as a 1099, either way. Then you rerun this report. Hey, show me all my receipts 1099, and then then you'll have your, your total down here. And then in this scenario, since the only check in the sample data is the 2023 one, you can, just like Atrix, you can run the 1099 for the current year or last year. So now if I do last year, print preview, now we're up to 3 pages, and I have it set. When I say I have it set, I didn't write this report, but the prefix A, company 10, right? So then it gives company 10 totals. Click next. Here's company 21. As you see, more than just one. And then it does give you a report total for what that's worth, even though you're going across companies there. And then notice if I come back here, let's run this one more time, unless there's any other questions on that. I'm going to go to the 1099 prep. We just ran it by fiscal entity, but if I switch it to vendor, right, let's go to last year, 600. Notice here, 2 pages. So it would sum up, right, the respective, go to the vendor level is my point. It doesn't break it out by entity. So the point is, if you use fiscal entity or prefixes, you'll definitely want to run that report respectively. Otherwise, by vendor sums it up to the vendor level. All right, come over here. Let's see if there's any other question. I think that's the same questions that have been out there. Just check on chat. I don't even know if the chat feature is available, but I don't see anything in chat to this point. Okay. Come back over here. All right, so let's get into the file or processing of the 1099s. That's just for Atrix. If you go to tasks, government, e-filing, reporting, we'll do form 1099 USA. So just like that Sage report, the 1099 preparation, this Atrix is built to do the same thing. So if we switch this to by fiscal entity, we will need to, run through it as many times as we do have, companies. Now it's only showing 10 and 21 because it already knows that it has checks for those respective companies. There are no AP checks for those other ones. So if I just click company 10, we have the NEC, the non-employee compensation, right? We have the reporting year. Again, this allows you to do the current year or the previous year. I'm going to do the previous year simply because there's more data in the previous year. With all that being said, if you have, I know today's December 19th. When I say I know, I had to look at the my computer, but December 19th of 24, if you happen to have closed 2024 1099, not that anyone's closing 2 weeks ahead of time, but if you happen to do it, you're not in trouble, if you will. The reason why I say not in trouble is, as you can see here, you can run it for the current year or jump back to 2024. So another scenario is, hey, we're not doing these till January 10th or second week in January. We're looking at, trying to put any more checks back into the prior year. You could close the year, and I don't like Sage's term close the year. I look at it as rolling the year forward, right? Point is, then you could, if you were in 2025 in AP, you could roll back to 2024 is my point. All right, so here I'm going to go to 22. We're going to put that 600. And then these are our two, right, for company 10. Now you may say, well, wait, there was more on that report you ran. Well, that was for company 21, right? There was only two for company 10. But notice here, if I do 21, company 21, and go next, this is where more of them showed up. So let's jump to company 21, because we're not going to process for both companies for this class here, or for this webinar. It does have everyone checked. So if you find yourself saying, oh wait, this guy doesn't need it, this guy doesn't need it, right? I wouldn't maintain that here. It wouldn't hurt, but why do that every year, right? Go to setup vendor and run that 1099 preparation report and get your Sage data, proper, right? Rather than, because if I deselect this does not write back to the vendor record and uncheck that vendor receives form 1099. So, and I'm going to make one more point here, and then I'll jump back in here. This A1 Electric Company. If I come over here, vendors, A1 Electric Company. I pointed this out earlier, just via a screenshot, but notice here under general, right? 46520 Highway 99, right? Here's that alternate address for 1099. If it shouldn't go to that Highway 59 or whatever address that was, you come, here's that address. So I'm just going to say 12, real creative, right? 123 Street. And let's say, I know it's Oregon, but let's say Beaverton, Oregon. And as much as I've looked at sample data, I do not know. Look at that. I know Atrix was very, that is news to me, that Sage is being interactive there. That's very interesting. I've been doing this since 05. I mean, this alternate address, like I said, came out in 24/1, but it's verifying that you have a correct postal code. All right, so Beaverton. There we go. All right, so we have the alternate address. We did 123 Street. Let's do save, close, come back over here. Government e-filing reporting. Do fiscal entity, prefix 21. I'm gonna go back a year, put 600, click next. Have all the check marks, next. Here, now we're gonna generate. So to this point, it hasn't asked us, well, I'll explain this message. It hasn't asked us yet, hey, are we doing a trial run or a test run, or are we going to file? That'll be in the next screen or two here. But the Atrix, I should say, Atrix, right? Atrix is very interactive. Atrix, if you look on their website, that efile.atrix.com or atrix.com, they ensure that they have 100% liability for the fact of that they have up-to-date forms, as long as you're doing the automatic update. So what you didn't notice is it didn't prompt us for an update, right? And you may say, well, why didn't it? Well, because before this class, I ran through this, right, to make sure there was no any unexpected errors or anything like that in data. So I already installed the updates. So I'm going to use this opportunity to show you uh, downloading and updating forms. You may say, well, where do I download update forms? It's the same area if you haven't been in here before. But as soon as you go into government e-filing reporting, Form 1099, if it finds a most recent update, any update on their website that they comply with the IRS and where all the forms are supplied from, Atrix is always up to date with those forms. So will literally pull up a message to say, hey, you have to click automatic update, and then it'll run through the Atrix update. So these are just some screens to kind of give you a heads up. Even though we didn't see them in this webinar, chances are when you go in there for the first or next time, probably more likely next time, not first time, chances are you're going to have some updates to go through. But if there is no available updates, you don't get those screens, right? It goes right into that. So I did want to point that out. So don't be alarmed if you get updates there. And then, like I said, Atrix is very interactive, not only having automatic updates that you have to run through, but it's saying, hey, you use 22 data, but the form you're using is 2024. Are you sure? Well, I'm sure from a sample data webinar, but pointing out to everyone else, if you're if you're not getting a message like this, that's good in the sense of, hey, you're in the proper year, you're running it for 2024, the form is 2024, you're good to go. But point is, Atrix is interactive and makes you aware of some discrepancies there. This is the screen that I was pointing out. Whether it's today, tomorrow, like I said earlier, today, tomorrow, right, when you can find some time rather than wait till January 1 or January 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I would recommend running this, trying to get to this test drive. Main reason, hey, make sure that you're not getting any errors going to Atrix. Also, make sure the updates run through properly, because then that'll buy you some time to either get with the consultant or your IT, but we're here to help to make sure we're not getting any errors, and then you can test drive all of your recipients. That is nice that they give you the 25, but if you're going to test drive, I would highly recommend doing all, just because, hey, that 26 recipient could have something wrong with them, right? It's nice they give you that option, but I always recommend all the recipients. Nothing will be sent to the recipients, meaning the vendors, right? It's all for your purpose, right? To take a look at it before. For this class, or webinar, I'm gonna go to no thanks. Let's start processing our 1099s, but I recommend you run through that test drive. That's for the 1099 side and the W2, 1099 and W2 side. All right, so here's your tax ID number that if it's not already populated, it absolutely should pre-fill, but if not, you can populate it in there. For AP, right, even though we're in AP, it's talking about multiple payroll data files, right? You'll get the same message over in the payroll world. The payroll side, which we'll walk through here, coming up here, you may have separate data folders for, you may have an office data folder, right? If I come over here, options, open company. I'll use this example. You may have a Timberline Construction or your main company data folder, and that could have your, from a payroll perspective, your field employees, right? But then down here below, you may have Timberline Construction office payroll, because you or your consultant set it up that way from a security aspect, because through Sage Security Administration, you can say, hey, this payroll person, manager, what have you, can see the office payroll and the field, but the payroll clerk, I don't want him or her looking at office salaries or manager salaries, what have you. And from a Sage security aspect, you may have a office. It's not required. It's just, and I've mentioned that to clients. They're like, "Oh, never knew that was an option." Just pointing out that I'm not going through this webinar right now to show you how to do that. You'd have to check with myself or another consultant. But it's a nice way to break out your office from your field if you want to secure the office payroll information. With all that being said, if I come back over here, I know we're talking AP right now, but it does ask about payroll. I've never set up a separate AP file for a given company, unless they were two entirely different data folders, right? Meaning two different entities and two separate ones. That's running through 1099 separately. But I've never done it, nor have I seen the need or a client's request from an AP perspective, is my point. I've always had the AP being in a single data file, meaning a single data folder. Hopefully that made sense. As I go through here, I'll jump back over to questions if that confused you at all. But from the short of it is 1099s. I'd be highly surprised if you had a separate AP vendor list for one given company. So point is here, we'll talk about this again in the payroll side. And the quick point on the payroll side is Atrix does allow you to, even though you have them in separate data folders, combine those two data folders into one Atrix filing to bring in your office and field, right? Because you obviously you want your own, W-3 for that given company. So here, I'm going to click next for the no. And now here I'm going to populate the required information. I'm going to use that 1, 2, 3. It'll just say Avenue in Rockford, Illinois. Now this information, you may say, well, why the heck is it making me fill this information in? Since we ran it by entity, if I come back over here to General Ledger, setup, prefix-based company, sample, whoever did this, set up the sample data out, in the Sage world, they felt the need not to populate the address information. So I would recommend, if your AP or 1099s or W-2s, that's filling in blank, rather than type that in every time, I would go to the source, right? Fill it in here so that when you do 1099s and W-2s, it'll pre-fill the information for you. But just wanted to point out why that information was blank. All right. All right, click next. Invalid field. Oh, I think it's a character. I did not do that on purpose. Yeah, Atrix is, like I said, very interactive, picky. When I say picky, I don't know why it doesn't allow the special character, but hey, I made the quick fix, right? So I'm filing for my company employer. State tax items, we'll see this on the W-2 side if you have local taxes and what have you. But here, if I click add, and if I go to the respective state, I'm in Illinois, but I do know the sample data, right, is out there in Oregon. And here, I'm going to just 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I click next. If they have any local tax items, you come here and add local taxes. Next. And it says, do you have any, do you have any recipients who elected to only receive 1099 forms electronically? I'm going to say no. I know I gave you, or not gave you yet, but that help topic with the screenshots from Matrix. So if you do decide you want to send them electronically, you click yes here. It is going to get to that point of asking me for an Atrix login. I or no other consultant that I know of has a Atrix login because we haven't filed our FEIN number with Atrix, right? The email portion comes up after that login screen. So could I click yes? But I'm going to click no. But this is the question of if you wanted to email. Same thing applies, like I said, for the employees. Same with the vendors. Would send them a link, send them a password. They would click the link and type in that respective password to access their PDF that they could download or print from there. I'm going to click next. Truncation, it defaults to no truncation. Typically, when I say typically, recommend truncating it. Totally up to you whether you want asterisks or X's here. While that's generating, I'm going to jump over here, see if there's any questions. See any new questions here? All right, here we are preparing. Did I jump into? All right, here, click OK, preparing. Okay, here's the vendors. I feel like that maybe I've taught year-end classes for the past 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't even know how many years, right? Literally two a year. I have seen in the 1099 screen, there are some references of payroll, right? But I feel like even now it's even a little bit more prevalent because looking at this, I'll be honest, I started questioning, did I start doing W-2s? And I know I didn't, right? But point is, it says it's called the W-2 1099 preparer. We are definitely doing 1099s, but I just want to tell you what I was thinking out loud, right? But yeah, we definitely went into tasks, government e-filing, reporting, 1099s. All right, so I can click maximize. I have had clients ask, hey, can I export or print this list? The answer is no if you're thinking that. Reason being is because if you start taking data from Atrix is saying, hey, this is our tool. It's built in within Sage, right? If you're going this far, you have to continue this route. If I click next, it verified that if there was a tax ID number either blank, right, or not properly formatted, it would certainly yell at us here. So here, if I click next, as you can see, it tells you what it's doing up here, verifying FEIN number, right, making sure that's checked. You can move this scroll bar over. And when I say over here, right, then you have this, I should say the scroll bar here. You can scroll back, move this back, but there's the FEIN numbers, right? Because it knows it's the 2-digit, right? And the format for the FEIN. If there was a vendor that was an employee and doing business as, right, that FEIN number would be unchecked, but it would have their, the employee social, when I say employee, the vendor, but the person, social security number in there. And then just like I said, in the most recent version, 24.2, it does properly put in the last name, first name, and middle name from the recipient name on the vendor setup over in Sage 300. So here I'm going to click next. Here you can take a look, right? Company name. Next. Checking the account number, country code, click next. address information. See how it jumped over here to the right. So I'm going to drag this over here. So it, as I'm sure you could already tell, it's turning it blue on the section that it's checking, verify all income boxes right here. If you get to this point, right, and say, hey, it shouldn't be 4620, it should be 4220, right? Why there was a $400 one that shouldn't have been 1099. I want to show you, make this point. In AP, if I'm entering an invoice, boom, boom, I'm not going to save this, but I'm just going to say here's that 400 example. Not sure if you're aware of this, but when you're entering AP invoice and it's per distribution, you can mark a AP distribution as exempt. So point is, if I just this specific invoice, this 400, if we did not want it to update the 1099 totals, this 400 would not, if we marked exempt, as you can see here, when I say as you can see here, it's kind of small, but it is there. We flag that respective distribution as 1099 exempt. Now, if I click it again, right, I unchecked it. Let's say you had two distributions. I'm going to go to, let's say subcontract. Let's say that is 1099, right? Oops. I'm going to change this to 200. So this distribution in my sample example, we want it to update the 1099 totals. But if there was something else as far as a distribution goes, and let's do cost of sales other, right? And did 200. I could mark this distribution as 1099 exempt. So first distribution, not 1099 exempt. This distribution, 1099 exempt. I'm going to click cancel out of this, but my point is, I know I brought up the number 400 earlier, but kind of switch it up a little bit. So 200 is not exempt, 200 is exempt, right? So going back to our matrix here, if you looked at this and said, wait, why is this 4620? It should have been 4420. Can you switch that to 4420? Yes. And that's what's going to print on the 1099s. But wanted to point out the proper way is to have Sage data accurate. And this may, I've heard from many clients, right? Never knew about that exempt button down there. But my point is that is how you achieve this scenario that just kind of came to me here, even though I have brought scenarios up like that in the past for webinars. Point is, then if we would have done that in retrospect, it would have put 4420 here as opposed to 4620. Jump back here and see if there's any questions on that. Don't see any. Hopefully that's a good thing, right? All right, so let's come back here. So let's put this back to 4620 the way it was, but wanted to give that example. Let's click next. Next. Then here, since we did the real run, final opportunity, we're going to say agree that, hey, we didn't just click next like Jeremy was, right? But we didn't get any errors, and we'll say we verify that, you know, tax ID numbers are right, amounts are right. We did kind of talk about that. You could change it if you needed that accurate number from that 1099 exempt. Here, more and more clients, right, are using this complete 1099 e-filing service. I mean, I always make a point, 12, 13, 14 years ago, worked with someone, they're like, no, I want to do, you know, the other options, print the 1099, right? I want to hand them off, whether it was 1099s or W-2s. When I say tried to get them to do the complete, I can promise you, I don't see a penny, nor does ETHOSystems, for a client going in the complete route. Literally, I think it was maybe 2 years later, she came back, and when we met, to do this, she's like, yeah, I'm gonna give that a go. And then after she did that, she's like, yeah, I don't know why I didn't do it the first couple years, right? But point is, I do get it that people may want to have that physical paper, right, and physically hand it to someone. So I respect that, not knocking that one bit, but my point is, hey, the complete W-2 service or 1099 service, Atrix is doing the dirty work for you, sending it out, mailing the copies, right, putting a stamp on there, and it's reasonable in my opinion for what you're looking to do. If I click next, PDF archive, not trying to take this money out of Atrix's hand, but I mean, as far as the PDF, you can always rerun these saved reports. I'm not aware of any clients saving the PDF archive. Feel free to do it. I don't see the need for that, but to each their own, right? Again, even by saying no thank you to the PDF archive, we can come back into Atrix and open up your saved report so you can reprint without even doing a PDF archive. Next, and then here, I'm not going to print to paper right now. I'm not connected to a printer, but literally this, I always recommend, hey, click print on this and think of this as your cover page, right, for your filing. If you have a filing cabinet, what have you, certainly can print to PDF. If you store this, create your PDF documents as we go along rather than purchase it, from Atrix. So that was just literally a simple cover page, if you will. We're going to wrap up the 1099 so we can get into the W-2 here, the last part of this. Up top it says report 1 of 5, shows the payer, right, 1099. If you do click print final, right, talks about inserting the 4-part perforated paper. Again, if you use the complete package and you have Atrix sending it, you don't have to purchase the 4-part, perforated paper. So that could be a return on that investment, if you will, right? If I click OK, printing to paper, I'm going to click cancel because I'm not going to start writing it to PDF. Everyone knows that you can write to PDF or print to paper. But as you can see here, there's a next button, 2 pages, right, for this given data set. Here's that. You may have already eyeballed this. I almost forgot that A1 Electric Company. I did that alternate 1099 address. So there's that 123 Street where the original general address was 59 Highway, whatever highway address that was. So just dawned on me, remember that there's your alternate address for that given vendor. So I'm just going to rattle through these next steps and peek to see if there's any questions on the 1099 and then get into the W-2 for the last 45 minutes here. But here, federal 1099s. Again, this is a copy, right? Because in this scenario, I did do the complete service. So Atrix is filing all of this and sending it to the respective vendors. So that's why this says print copy. You want to print the federal now? I'm going to say no, but you would say yes. And actually, you wouldn't get this message if you actually, click the print copy, and that's, a copy for your records. Here's the 1096, the 1 page. You can print a copy for your own records again. Here's that contact information that we put on the first screen. We don't have any clients in Oregon, but we do in the Southwest and Midwest. But the reason why Oregon's pulling up because the sample data is from Beaverton, Oregon Sage, so that's why Oregon's pulling up. But if whatever states you work in, it would pull in the respective, state copies and state documents. So that's why we see the Oregon 1096 state form. Again, Atrix can file and send each respective state. And then here, full circle back to what we mentioned at the start of going to efile.atrix.com, making sure you enroll, or find out from the prior person, right, or contact Atrix directly to find out, hey, do we need to reset the password? I know Atrix has their own. I think I tried to print the 1096 there at the end. I clicked OK, so that's what, trying to print the 1096 to PDF, so I'll just save that. But this is your, as it says here, your Atrix login password, and once you log in, the next window, and I don't have a login and password again, because we didn't file, consultants don't set up Atrix logins that I'm aware of with an FEIN number. Point is, after you log in, it'll pop up and saying, hey, $24.97, $24.95 or $50, and at that point you can put in your credit card information. There is an option to save the information on file, or you just simply uncheck it so it'll be blank, the next time you come in. To each their own on that. Obviously, security has always been a big deal with everyone, but in more recent years, right? I never want to take the chance or feel better about it. You don't have to save your credit card information, but you can type it in the next screen. And then at that point, Atrix will give you an AFID number, it's called, which is an Atrix filing identifier. Then you'll get text or email updates, right, of when it's filed, and you can select the date that you wanted to have it filed by. All right, I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to say not enrolled. If you want to try again later, I'm going to say no. And close out of here. But if you once you do log in, pay that, right, gives the AFID number. It's not bringing you back in here. But here, do you want to save your information as your work in progress? I'm going to say yes. And the reason why I said yes is just to show you that if I came back into e-filing reporting 1099s, new report or a saved 1099 report, you can recall your respective report that you saved. It saves automatically after you file it, but you'll have a listing of all your filings, right? You can come up here and click edit, and then point is, it brings you back into the process if you needed to save your work and gather additional information. But if you do your preparation, you shouldn't have to, unless you need to reprint a respective copy for an employee. All right, so that's it on the AP side. I'm going to peek again to see if there's any questions, and I don't see anything in there. Looks like everyone's still on here. Thanks for everyone attending here. I'm going to, like I said, focus now over here on the payroll and go through that. I mean, a lot of even though it was an hour and 15 minutes, we were covering a lot of things on the Atrix side of things, which apply to both AP, and payroll. Obviously when I say obviously, for the updates, let me close out a general ledger here. For the updates, the preparation, when I say preparation, the version 24.3. But here, as far as payroll goes, if anyone if payroll doesn't apply to anyone and you jump off, I appreciate you being on here. We'll save this recording. I do know that some people just get on this year end just strictly for the AP side of things. So if you do decide to leave, thank you for joining. And here we are with the payroll. So as far as payroll goes, payroll is, when I say different from AP, we all know the obvious differences, but There is, you have to keep up with the payroll month, right? In order to post to job cost, post payroll, post to general ledger, right? So payroll, there is no close year. There's only the close, when I say close month, uh, I lied, I'm sorry. I spoke too soon. There's not like a 1099 year, right? There's the close year, right, to get into the next year. But truly, where this comes into play is, I always give this example, again, never naming client names, but I think it was back in 2012, if that was the year, Social Security went from 4.2% to 6.2%, and then, or vice versa. Um, the client I was working with, what they did is they closed the year for payroll going into, I forget if going into 2012 or going into 2013, closed the year, then they came in here and downloaded taxes, right, for that next year. And then that taxes for that new year, again, flipped from 4.2 to 6.2 or 6.2 to 4.2. So now they were in the next year. And when they were in the next year, someone came in and said, hey, you shorted me 8 hours or whatever it was, right, for last year, or 4 overtime hours, whatever it was. What they did is they went back in. I don't know if they actually voided the check, right, or went in and added another check to the prior year when they had their new year's taxes at 4.2 or 6.2. So the guy was happy. He got his extra 4 hours or 8 hours or whatever it was, right? But then when the client, and I was with them, when they went into federal e-filing reporting W-2s, out of the 100 employees, only one showed up an error. And I'll show you this on the screen, not the actual error. But as we were going through the grid, it popped up and said, hey, this guy was not within $1 of that 4.2 or 6.2. So we did have to do some digging, right, and investigative work to find out that, hey, the reason for that was because they went back to the prior year to cut a check for the current year's new tax change, right? So ultimately, the fix there was we couldn't just change numbers over an matrix. So the fix there was we literally had to go into enter checks. We went into that employee. If you know, a lot of clients have seen the enter check screen. Some people say, I've never seen enter check screen. We just enter time and process payroll. My point is here, we pulled up that employee, went back to the prior year, and went down here to employee tax. And I think 8 comes to mind. I can't remember. I mean, it was 12 years ago, right? Whether it was 8 hours or $8. But point is, we put like a negative $8 in the amount for Social Security, saved it, and then when we went into tasks, federal e-filing reporting W-2s, Atrix was happy because Social Security for that given year was within the dollar. I mean, I think we got it to 0 cents, but it was within the dollar compliant. So I always like to tell that story, not to rehash bad memories on when we were doing that investigative work, but point is, for this webinar, pointing that out in the mindset that, hey, once you close the year, right, and download taxes for the new year, we don't want to go back and cut checks or add time or reduce time to the prior year, because Sage is going to say, hey, this is the new tax file. I don't, I'm not going to revert to some old tax file you had. I'm using the new tax file. So from a timing perspective, if you have any questions on that, hopefully that made sense. Some clients may think, yeah, why the heck would I do that? I would never do that. Well, my point is, hey, it happens, right? Or if someone, does something quickly because an employee is upset, right? I'm not saying that employee was upset. He may have simply just asked, right? Hey, you shorted me. So from a timing perspective, once you close the year, right, we download taxes. This is your new tax file. for moving forward, whether it's for the prior year or current year. Here, once you do download the taxes, right, that'll update your federal withholding or whatever federal rates may have changed. You do also need to come in to set up tax rates. Don't forget to do this here. Come down. I'm going to use Illinois as an example because that's where I live, but any state unemployment. Now, there is nothing in there because it's sample data, and sample data is in Oregon, but hey, if your percent went from 2.7 to 3.2, that download taxes does not say, hey, what company is this? Oh, let me go update their percent. It's up to the end user to update the respective state unemployment rates. And with that being said, if you work in multiple states, you'll want to update, all respective states that may have changed. All right, let's see. I know I just, like I said, jumped right into payroll. Oops, let's see a question here. Thank you, Danielle and Julie. Hello, Julie. Will a copy of the webinar be available to view later? Yes. Jen, our marketing manager, and Kirsten, I recorded the broadcast as soon as I started. So yes, that'll be sent out to everyone that signed up. Good question. And if you just joined, and I'm not tracking anyone when they're leaving. Now I do see a few have left, but like I said, the first part was 1099s. So I said, if you don't have payroll in-house and you outsource it, if you need to leave, fair enough, right? Understood. But the first part was more of the 1099 side of things, and this latter part is the payroll. And at the very beginning, talked about Atrix. So yes, we'll get that recording to everyone. And then Danielle, what's the correct way that should have been processed? I just saw that question. I know I did explain the process, but with that being said, what I explained, did that answer your question? If you're able to answer that, Danielle, if you're perfect. Thank you, Danielle. All right, so let me jump back over here. There is, as far as to your point about processing, right? We talked about taxes. There are reports such as, where's it at here? Sorry. Tax preparation. I was on it right to the start. Subject to employee, and you also have prior per subject to employee, right? So if you were to close the year, right, and get into 2025 before running this report, you certainly can get that information here from the prior per, right? I don't know, a dozen years ago, there was someone that was animate, I have to run all my reports before I close the year. The answer, totally understand that. If they're off, year-to-date totals, they may not have had this prior per at that time, right? I know Sage has added more payroll reports, throughout the years. More and more reports are off transaction files, right? So that you can put the date range in. You're not burdened, if you will, by the fact of if there is a master file report. When I say master file, right? Year-to-date total prior year. So if you happen to close the year, when I say prematurely, right? Prematurely before you actually run a report that was pulling year-to-date totals, I promise you we can still get that data off of transaction reports. Either myself or another consultant have wrote similar reports off rather than off the master file off the transactions. All right, and then once you run your, given reports for the year, W-2s, you can run it for the current year or prior year. What I also want to point out to clients, I know everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but hey, how do I archive employees, right? There was a client I worked with quite a bit over in the Chicagoland area, and she's like, hey, I really need to start archiving some employees, right? Well, come to find out, after I had an initial conversation, we decided to wait till like, mid-January or third week of January. We haven't really set a date, but she brought up great information saying, hey, so and so worked, early in the year, but then there's other employees that haven't worked here in multiple years. And I said, well, rather than run through it twice, let's wait till you process your W-2s, right? 1099s, but we're talking payroll now, right? W-2s, in the mindset that we don't want to start archiving employees until you have until you have processed your W-2s, because Atrix looks at your current file. Not this client that I'm talking to, but I'm thinking of another consultant that they explained a horror story that they jumped to archiving employees before they had their W-2s finalized. Well, then we had to look, there is no history back to current. So there was a big ordeal trying to get that fixed. My point is, I highly recommend archiving, right? I highly do. I've done many archiving projects, but from an archive perspective, hey, wait till, latter part of January, as far as still a year-end procedure, but process your W-2s and 1099s and such before taking that project on. All right, as far as W-2s here, Atrix looks at this tools, modify forms, W-2 forms. I was just in here the other day with the client. They needed to add a 401, a new 401k catch up or match or whatever it may have been. So Atrix absolutely looks here, tools, modify forms, W-2 forms. Chances are you just have the defaults. I have seen some clients that have multiple years in there. There's no need for that, because you can just continually update your form with, Sage calls the default, right? Point is, here we're just saying, hey, every year before processing W-2s, this I'm sure is a penny. If not, put that to a penny. And then here, if we come over here to amounts, all of this information is pre-filled. But for example, like if we're going into box 12A, you put the respective text that you can talk with your accountant with, right? Hey, what identifier we want here. And then if I click here, notice that the deducts, fringes, and pays light up, if you will, or become active. If I click deducts, this is going into your setup deducts, as you may imagine here. And if I go 401k deduction, now we just told the W-2 form and have Atrix retrieve that 401k data, so you're not manually typing in 401k amounts in the Atrix grid. If you find, hey, we have ABC 5 right fields, hey, but I have 6 or 7 or 8 deductions, how do I add more boxes here? The fact is, you can't. That's the W-2 form. Now you may say, well, you can't just tell me can't, right? How do I make it work? That's when we get into formulas. So point is, under tools, formulas, if we needed to add multiple 401ks together, right, to be on one box of the W-2, we absolutely have that functionality. And I've absolutely helped clients write formulas of literally pulling in, hey, this 401k deduction plus this 401k deduction plus this 401k deduction, right? Then rather than click deduction here, you click formulas, and then go find, right now the sample data doesn't have any public formulas meaning custom formulas. It doesn't have any in there, but we would write a public formula, go grab that guy, and my point is, it would sum up those 2 or 3 or however many deductions or fringes on one line of your choosing with that respective code on that line. So hopefully that made sense. I'm going to go peek at the questions just in case any questions came up with that conversation. Oh, what's the correct way that should have been processed? And then the extra 8 hours should have been processed in the next current year, correct? I would say, when I say yes, yes, in the sense of it wouldn't have caused any errors in Atrix. I would say, hey, ask if an accountant, right, or the owner or someone says, hey, I want that 8 hours last year, then if they, say, hey, I want that dated last year, I want that on his W-2 for last year, then the proper way was we would have to go into the tax calculator and go into that enter checks and manually calculate the proper taxes for that 4.2, if that makes sense. Now, the client was fine with taking that negative off on the Social Security, right, and be done with it. But yes, I would agree of saying, hey, the extra 8 hours, just put it in next year. But I have seen, whether it's employees or owners or whomever, say, no, I want this in last year, or the employee saying, I want that on my W-2. Then we would have had to manually calculate those taxes. But to your point, to your question, if 8 hours was put into that next year, Atrix would have been like, hey, fine, right? Hey, I calculated at the tax rate for that given year, and no problem. Got it. That makes sense. Good options for next year. Yep. You're welcome. All right. So here we got this. I'm going to click save and close. So I'm going to jump right into federal e-filing and reporting. I have talked with clients who are like, where's Atrix at, right? Because we always say Atrix, right? It doesn't say it on the menu. I'm just pointing out that your Atrix is the tool that is ran when we click on the federal e-filing and reporting. This is your the Atrix world, if you will. Here, the 2024 W-2 is out there, as we clearly see right now. Today is what, Thursday? I think it was, I'm pretty darn sure it was Monday. I was on with that. The client was asking about the EW-2s, and on Monday it was the 2023 form, and we ran automatic updates. So just randomly going into this meeting, right, rather than say, oh, the 2024 form should be out here soon. Obviously, we still have another, week of payroll, but the forms are out there. You'll want to make sure you see 2024 here. Again, when I came in here, it jumped right to here. It didn't ask me for automatic updates because on this server, I've already, like I mentioned earlier, I've already ran those automatic updates. If anyone joined later than earlier, just point out all these forms, Word documents I put together will be sent by ETHOSystems or Jen and Kirsten. As I'm pointing that out, oh yeah, it was this. If there's any errors you see, I have some tools, when I say tools, from Atrix showing how to fix those, but what I wanted to bring up was this guy here. Says, hey, you're not up to date on your forms, click automatic update. So we'll always want to click automatic updates. If you click continue without updates and you try to print any forms, W-2s or 1099s, it'll literally have a watermark draft, right? And it also, Atrix won't file them for you until you do the automatic update. So it does force the hand on that. I just wanted to make another point that I'm not seeing these screens, or you're not seeing these screens on our side, because I've already ran through those updates. All right, back here. Again, just like we saw on the 1099 side, Atrix, I'm sorry, Sage 300 payroll is in the year 22. On your side, just pointing out, we absolutely want to match up the year of the data from Sage to the respective form. So I'm not practicing what I'm preaching here because simply there is no sample data that I know of, unless another consultant entered some, but there is no data in 2024 in the Timberline construction sample data. So I am breaking what I'm not practicing what I'm preaching, but I'm using this opportunity to point out 2024 form with the year 2024. All right, so then here's all the employees. And when I say all the employees that have at least a penny from our W-2 form. Click next, click generate. Now I did run through this, I think it was last night or a couple days ago. Now this does have Oregon, like I said, the sample data, which I've mentioned multiple times, this is Oregon. So we are going to see some errors here specific to Oregon. Here's the message that I just talked about. Hey, make sure you have 2024 form and data 24. You won't see this message if you practice what I was preaching, right? Before we get to those errors, this is what we'll get through these windows. Here, again, I highly recommend test driving with all the employees. Again, never named client names, but I remember at that time about that 8 hours or $8, whatever it was, they're like, hey, everything's this was the first time them doing Atrix. And I'm like, yeah, Atrix is very interactive. It's, awesome tool. And sure enough, we went right into processing W-2s, and the client wasn't happy about that one error because, number one, didn't know at the time why Atrix was yelling at us, right? So if in retrospect, 12 years ago, if they would have done a test drive, right, before I got on site, they would have got that error. We could have done the research, right? Point is, we did the research, right? Just took a little fighting to get through that, and then we were on our way. So that's another reason why I would recommend doing the test drive first. If there's anything that you need more time to look into, or refer to your consultant to see what and if anything came up. So here I'm going to go, no thanks, let's start processing W-2s. This is what I was pointing out earlier, not necessarily applies to the AP side, but I know I'll try to repeat it quickly since I already mentioned it. But point is, payroll, you definitely may have multiple data files for this company. And again, what multiple data files means is not multiple prefixes, but multiple data folders out here, data files, meaning Timberline Construction may have your field employees, but then down here you may have a Timberline Construction office salary. Again, purely from a security aspect that, hey, the day-to-day payroll clerk, we don't have them looking at the office salaries. Now, there's plenty of clients that their payroll clerk can see anything, right? So they don't have that broken out. Point is, if you do have it broken out or want to do that in the future, my point is Atrix allows for us to say, yes, we have multiple data files. And then what we do is we click next, and then we do two separate filings. When I say two separate filings, we don't file separately. My point is, we think of it as two separate grids. It saves a file for those two, and then it brings you to a screen where you can select those two, main data folder field and the office. And my point is, then Atrix has a feature that says merge them together. And then you'll see all of those employees from both data folders merged into one grid. And then you would do your, your one, W-2, well, not one W-2, but, one W-3 with multiple, W-2s all together. So it's a really slick feature that Atrix allows for. But for this here, I'm going to say, and if you do need help with that, certainly reach out to myself or another consultant, and we can certainly walk you walk you through that. And you can do that even from a test drive mode as well. That would be another reason why to take advantage of the test drive. So here I'm going to say no, use a single data file. And I'm going to throw in my name, contact first name, consultant. And if there's anything required and you try to click next, yeah, it doesn't require on this, doesn't require the contact phone or contact address, but if it did, I promise you, just like we saw on the 1099 side, Atrix will turn it up red and you'll have to fill that information in. Here I'm filing for my company or employer. Here, again, I know it sounded redundant, but Atrix is very interactive. Here, your tax number for Oregon state withholding is incorrect or improperly formatted, right? So this, I think I may have typed this number in, or someone did at some point. Now, I do know if I just go 1 through 8, oh, this is the unemployment now. It did jump. I'm just going to make up a number and see if it likes that, right? So point is, don't just type 1, 2, 3. I could probably leave this unsaid, but don't just type 1 through 8, right? And just appease. Make sure you're typing in your proper tax account number for withholding and unemployment. We come click next. This starts getting into state withholding is configured. Oh yeah, the transit tax. I did have that on the agenda. I don't think I scrolled down after I looked at this earlier. Yeah, Atrix interaction example, Oregon transit tax required in box 14. So again, we're doing Oregon for this. I'm going to click next, but point is, no matter what state you're working on, if you're working in multiple states, you're going to see Oregon in here, Illinois, Texas, what have you. It'll pre-fill the taxes that had taxes calculated within the Sage data. And then Oregon has no W-2 reporting requirements. Okay. Do any employees have? Do you have employees who are exempt from any part of Medicare? I'm going to say no. Members of the clergy, do we want to use control numbers? This is optional, right? You could say yes, and you could do a sequential number or the employee ID, right? And then down here, I mentioned this early on before we got into AP, but this is what I talked to Atrix about earlier this week based on a conversation I had with a client that I said I need to look into. But it says, do you have any employees who electronically want to receive their W-2s? If we say yes, my point is we don't have to go into each employee and click the checkbox EW2 only, because if you check those boxes for those given employees, as the term said on the employee setup only, they would only get the email. But if we don't check it on the employee and click yes here, then you can email it to them and send them a paper copy. And I know I'm repeating what I mentioned earlier. You may say, well, why would I want to do both if I'm emailing it to them? And that reason may simply be because, hey, if it went to their junk or it went to their clutter, they couldn't find it, or their email system blocked the email coming from the email that you set up. At least that that they got the paper copy, and then that could be kind of your first go of sending electronic W-2s. All right, so I'm going to click next here. We've got about 10 more minutes, but almost done here. W-3 information. If I down here, kind of payer, right, the 941. If you have any third party sick, right, this is all, as it says, the W-3 information, but I'm going to just leave the 941 here. And then I'll jump back to see if there's any questions. Social security numbers, right? Security, when I say these days, always been prevalent, but I will say more and more recently, right? I would recommend truncating it. I don't have a recommendation whether you use asterisks or X's. Well, essentially a personal preference there. So all those screens that you just kind of saw and blipping through, it's literally, you know, going out to your data, as you may imagine, and populating it into this grid here. Talks about reviewing, editing, printing a copy, you know, for accuracy here. So if I click OK, number one, it's on the verify employee information. So all the employee information, if you look here, hey, I don't see the address, just take this scroll bar, right, move that over. And with that scroll bar, you can maximize the screen, right? Which, as we know, you know, in Sage can't always maximize the screens as much as we want, but this you can. There, you scroll over, you can click the arrow over, right? Here's a scroll bar down. Get this information. I don't think anyone in this sample data has the same social security number, but I actually, a handful of years ago, when I would set up test employees, I would put in social security number 11111, right? All ones or all twos. And then I did that for another employee. My point is, Atrix will, if it does see an employee with the same social security number, which, as we all know, shouldn't be the case, but I have seen with one particular client where they had, I'll just say Joe Schmo employee at his social security number. Well, then he got laid off, as we all know that happens plenty of times in the construction world. And then later on in the year, they didn't use that same employee. They set up a new one, whether it was a new payroll clerk, didn't know the other one was there, right? Whatever it may be, but point is put a new employee, same employee, but different ID with the same social security number. My, not my assistant, Atrix will identify that and say, hey, this guy and this person have the same one. Do you want to merge them together? You say yes. So chances are that's not going to happen, but letting you know it has happened, and I have seen that. And again, Atrix will do that verification for you. Here, if I click next, here it's going into the retirement plans, right? Checking the, Atrix isn't checking the box. Atrix is looking at the employee setup, whether or not there's a checkbox there. So those checkboxes, if you come to find, you know, look at this and say, hey, Rebecca Gibson, right? We know she had the, you know, 401k. Well, she, my example is she actually does have it checked. Whoever the employee is above, right? Hey, they should be checked. Can you check it here? Yes, absolutely, but I would recommend, so you're not having to do that every year, right? Go to the setup employee. I'm just going to pull up the first one. Oops. All right, retirement plan. So this checkbox right here, even though you may have 401k over here, and I don't know if this employee does, it doesn't, but even if you had 401k and was calculating the amounts here, Sage does not say, oh, wait, there's a deduction ID 401k. Here, let me go check this box for you. Sage does not do that. It's up to you, the end user, as you're setting up an employee with deductions 401k, for you to check this box. And once that's checked, then when you run Atrix, oops, over here, Atrix will have that respective checkbox checked, you know, from Sage. And with all that being said, one more point to that is, if I check this, check this, check this, I mentioned this earlier for a different scenario, these checkbox don't go right back to Sage. So point is, if you check those boxes, finish out of W-2s, okay, your W-2s for 2024 are correct, but then next year, if you didn't check those boxes on the employee setup, again, you'd have to be checking those boxes every time. So I always say, not I, plenty of other consultants too, right? And Sage, change make the source data correct. All right, so I'm going to click next here. This was the screen where we got to about that $8 or 8 hours, right? Literally click next, and one employee, it popped up a message said, hey, you're not within the dollar of the social security. That's when we had to close out of this and do the investigative work, fixed last year, and then came back in here, boom, no error. Then the client was happy. All right, next, we have Oregon wages, Oregon tax. And then this here, this is specific to Oregon. This is what I gave the heads up on, where, again, Atrix is giving you this saying, hey, we need to report this transit tax, right? So I'm going to click go back and correct. And I left this error on rather than fix it because I wanted to show you, like I said, how, even though I've been saying Atrix is interactive, pointing out, even though I don't think any client on here is from Oregon. If they are, great. But this is specific to Oregon, right? If I click OK. Now, rather than for the last 4 minutes, me type 1, or at least a value, right, in all of these, for the sake of finishing this out, if I came here, did this, now I am not, I'm going to remove this row. I am not recommending saying, hey, if you get errors, start removing rows, right? I'm ending the webinar on some dry humor. I'm just pointing out, for the sake of everyone's time and finishing this up, I'm going down the mindset that this W-2 process was for 5 employees, right? To fulfill Atrix's need for the one. And notice here now I can click next because I did whatever the Oregon transit tax rule is, right? It needed something in there that there was tax charged. Here I'm going to click next. And now this, I'm not going to process, meaning I'm not going to log in and send this out, but I'm going to click agree. But I would totally be making that up that I agree that I did all my due diligence, because as you saw, I just removed all those employees, but it does allow for that. Here, the complete W-2 service, just like we saw on the 1099s, right? 280, right? Or if you want to do the only employee copies. Now, earlier when I said, hey, you could do both, right? Well, now thinking about it, hey, that would cost you extra money. We're not getting any of the money, ETHOSystems. I'm not either. But if you went down that EW2 route and you marked the employee setup, right? Now it's $1.30, right? As opposed to that 280. And I know that can add up, especially with the number of employees for clients. So keep that in mind as you go through this for the W-2 filing. I'm going to say no to the PDF. Next. There's Oregon, and then just like we did here, this is the earlier when I mentioned control numbers. You can start control numbers with the sequential numbers, or which would make more sense, right? At least in my opinion, use the employee ID numbers as the control numbers so that you could see that reference. Just like I said on the 1099s, I recommend printing this. Think of that as your cover page, as your filing in-house, right? Let's see, almost done here. But I mean, when I say almost done, I'm going to go peek at the questions, but then I know our 2 hours is up here, but showing you the employer W-2, right? We're not going to be printing right now, but we did do the complete W-2 service. So Atrix is sending everything to the employer, or I'm sorry, not to the employer. This is your employer copy, right? So you'd want to print that final copy for yourself. I'm going to click next and not print that, right? But the federal W-2, if you did that complete filing, Atrix would e-file that, the federal W-2 for you. You can print a copy for your own record, right? But it's not something you would file. Atrix would send that and e-file that for you. Same thing with the federal W-3. And again, more and more clients, I can't tell clients what to do, but I can promise you more and more are doing the e-filing, right, through the Atrix, not buying the pre-printed form, right, to save money and time, right, and have Atrix handle that. But point is, still print a copy for your own records there. Oops. All right, and then here, that's the Oregon W-2. And then here, as you can see, like I said, Atrix is, I'm going to put in these numbers here to appease Atrix. 0, 0, 0. Offer employer-sponsored retirement. I'm going to say yes. So at this point, and here it's, notice how that was read. If I would have put in my phone number at the main screen, I wouldn't have had to type it there, but same difference. You can do print a copy. Next, I'm going to click agree, cancel, and then just like we did for the 1099 step, it's the same username and password that you use over in the 1099. You would log in with your Atrix login and password, and you would get it pay with a credit card. You don't need to save that credit card information on there. That credit card information is going through Atrix secure site, and they're getting paid to send this out, not ETHOSystems or Sage, right? You'll get an AFID number, Atrix filing identification number, so you could track when they're successfully e-filed and sent out the door. So I'm going to say cancel to this. I'm going to say not enrolled. And you want to try again later? No. I'm going to come back to the questions here. I know in a couple of minutes over. What was the workaround for entry point not found on Atrix? The entry point not found on Atrix, I'm going to have Jen and Kirsten send these files, but I do have, when I say send these files, this guy here, this Word document, I know I'm going to open it and then close it, but that message, there's this error report through this path. Jen and Kirsten are going to send these documents over, so I did document that, but this guy right here is what fixed mine for that. And then, are there any updates that need to happen in Sage before downloading 2025 taxes? Just the 24.3, that is the year-end supported version. And then what's the timeline for downloading 25 taxes? Is it processed December payroll, close December in payroll, then download 2025 taxes processed January? Yes. You'll want to make sure everything's processed. There's nothing in I always have clients check the new file, right? Make sure there's nothing sitting out there as far as unposted or unprocessed, but pretty much what you just, when I say pretty much what you just said, make sure it's processed, close it, there's a clean new file, and then that's when we want to download the taxes, and then also go on to set up taxes and update the unemployment rates. And then can we process this payroll on December 30th with a check date of January 2nd in 2025 and post in January? You'd have to go into your payroll settings, and I'll leave with this point here. As long as here, if I go to file payroll settings, the accounting date, I mean, if your check date is if your accounting date is set to check date, but your period end date is December 30th, having your accounting date as check date will, and then you have a 2025 check date, you'll want to make sure that depending on how you want those taxes, right? if you have a check date for 2025, right, and you have your taxes still back in 24, we'd have to talk through that scenario. But typically it's, hey, if I'm doing a check date in 2025, I want to make sure I have my, taxes downloaded there. But it all comes down to, hey, do you have your accounting date set as check date or period end date, and looking at that. Hopefully that answered it, but I would say that would be more of a follow-up question with myself or another consultant. We could kind of talk through. Oops, I see you said thank you. All right, awesome, thank you. I'm going to end this session. We'll get all those things sent out to everyone, and I appreciate everyone for joining.